Hey, how's it going, friends? Thank you for tuning in to VR Revelations once again. Welcome. It is February the 3rd, the year of our Lord 2023. So, before I get into the news here of Zelensky's meeting with European leaders, and also the statement he made saying that they will not back down for Bakhmut, which, contrary to what all the Western sources have been trying to insinuate, saying that Bakhmut is not really that important and not really that big of a deal, Zelensky has called it a fortress. So, again, once again, Zelensky contradicts all the lies that are coming out of the Western media propaganda machine. And we're going to be taking a read here from the Washington Post, who is part of that propaganda machine. But again, they're trying to foreshadow, right? They're trying to let us know what is going to happen in the future, which is the inevitable fall of Bakhmut, which is imminent. And we're actually going to be taking a look at the map. But before I jump into that, make sure you give this video a like and make sure you subscribe so you can get notifications whenever I drop more videos. Also, just a quick announcement. I am going to be gone over the weekend. So right now it is Friday, so I won't be back until Monday. I am going on a small trip with my local church. So I'd much appreciate it if you guys could pray for me that all things on the trip turn out well. And so I'll be back by Monday, God willing. But yeah, just that quick short announcement there. So you won't see any videos from me until I return on Monday. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of developments. There are things happening or taking place by the hour. So, things are developing very quickly right now in the world, guys. So make sure you put all your faith in God. Don't trust in man. Don't trust in your governments. Don't trust in anything else, because everything else will pass away, but God's word will remain forever. But anyways, let's jump right into it. So as you can see here, Zelensky did meet with EU leaders, and he made some comments here concerning Bakhmut, as we are going to be reading here from the Washington Post. But before we do that, let's actually take a look at the map right now and at the situation on the battlefield. So as you can see here, this is on the eastern side of Ukraine, and if we zoom in, we can actually take a look at Bakhmut right now. Now, we know that just a couple of weeks ago, the Russian army took control of Soledar, which is right down here. And again, that was supposed to be a pretty well fortified city. It has a huge salt mine system underneath. And the Russians took that. The Western media tried to downplay the Russians' victory there as long as they could, but inevitably it was just too obvious. And as you can see now, the Russians are far beyond that point. They actually just took control of Blahodatne down here, and again they continue to make their push westward. And the next big city that everybody has their eyes on is Bakhmut, and the city is pretty much almost encircled. As you can see here, the Russians have actually made quite an advancement westward towards the south of Bakhmut, as you can see here. And pretty much what they are going to be doing here is encircling the city, right? So once you have these forces push north, then they will be able to close Bakhmut here, and whatever Ukrainian forces haven't left the city by then will be trapped there, and they can either surrender or suffer the consequences like many did in Soledar. But yeah, there's fighting in the city, and I'm expecting the city to fall here within the next couple of days, if not at the most. I'm not even going to say weeks. I think at the most 2 weeks, the Russians should be at the center of the city and pretty much have control, because again, we are heading into the 1 year anniversary, right? If you could call it an anniversary of this war, and so there is a rumored major offensive here that the Russians are supposed to be launching within the next couple of weeks. And I think before they do that, they want to take control of Bakhmut. Now, it's pretty obvious to everybody analyzing the situation right now that Bakhmut is about to collapse. The Russians are already encircling the city, and they're going to take control. So the Western media has been trying to downplay the importance of Bakhmut. Now, before it was obvious that the Russians were going to take control, they tried to prop up Bakhmut as a symbol of Ukrainian resistance, and in fact, it was one of the strongholds of the Ukrainians. But now that it's obvious that it's going to fall to the Russians, the Western media is trying to downplay its importance, which is hilarious because Zelensky literally just said that it is a fortress city for Ukraine. So, they can't even get their story straight. But in reality, it is a fortress city, and that's why it's it's been such a ferocious battle that has been going on there between the Ukrainian forces and the Russians. Of course, the Western media is trying to make it seem like, the Russians have been struggling to take the city since like the beginning of the wars for months now. But in reality, the Russians were actually, taking territory in other places near the front lines. And, one of their objectives before going all in towards Bakhmut was to take Soledar so that they could cut off of supply routes and support to Bakhmut, and also so that they could begin an encirclement movement, a pincer movement. So, the Russians really hadn't focused all of their attention and energy into Bakhmut, but they are now, and that's exactly why Bakhmut is getting ready to collapse. But anyways, let's go ahead and take a look here, or rather, let's go ahead and take a read here from this Washington Post article. Remember, this is a Western propaganda website here, right? The Washington Post, and of course, they're biased in their support for Ukraine, and they like to criticize and exaggerate what is going on the battlefield. They like to criticize Russia and exaggerate Ukraine's situation and try to put a positive spin on it. But even now, they are actually foreshadowing the fall of Bakhmut, even though Zelensky has been pretty much ignoring the warnings by the United States, who have told him to pull out of Bakhmut and to save his forces for a later battle or a future counteroffensive, which is not going to happen. So, anyways, it says Ukraine, with waves of invading Russian troops pushing for their first significant victory in months. There's the propaganda, guys. Of course, we know that a couple of weeks they took control of Soledar, which was a major victory. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Friday that his country's forces would fight as long as we can to hold onto the embattled city of Bakhmut in the eastern Donetsk region. Of course, he's in too deep with Bakhmut, so if he retreats now, he's going to look cowardly, and it's just going to look bad for the Ukrainian war effort. And, there's been so many Ukrainian troops that have already died there at Bakhmut, so on top of those things, you would be dishonoring their courageous fighting, because, again, these people are just taking orders. Unfortunately, that's just the way of wars. And, Zelensky is pretty much in too deep, so it looks like he is not going to back down, and it is going to be catastrophic, when the Russians take complete control of Bakhmut. The potentially imminent loss of Bakhmut, there it is, guys, the foreshadowing, right? It's warning you of what's going to happen. Which has been under siege by Russian fighters for months, cast a shadow over a meeting in Kyiv where European leaders offered pledges of support and 35 million LED light bulbs to help manage power outages caused by Russian airstrikes. Wow, what incredible support, right? you had Ursula over there, and they're so supportive of Ukraine that they're going to send over 35 million lead light bulbs, even though what they need are tanks, airplanes, missiles, literally a whole army. And the best they can do is light bulbs. Yeah, that's incredible resolve there by the European Union. But no concrete promises about when Ukraine could expect to join the bloc. Again, Ukraine failed to join NATO. They're pretty much never going to join NATO now. And so Zelensky is now trying to join the European Union. But Ursula and all the European Union leaders know that the defeat of Ukraine is inevitable. So they're just pretty much trying to make it seem like, eventually they are going to accept Ukraine. But in reality, they know it's never going to happen, because if they do accept Ukraine, it'll be under Russian leadership by that time. The fierce defense by Ukrainian troops and months of bloody fighting yielded a national rally cry, Bakhmut holds. And Friday's difficult news from the front provided a stark reminder to the visiting EU delegation that Russian President Vladimir Putin has not given up on his plan to conquer Ukraine's Donbass region and to seize control of 4 provinces that Russia claims illegally. The Washington Post makes sure to point that out, illegally, even though the people in those regions are in the majority Russian and voted to join the Russian Federation. Have annexed. No one will hand over Bakhmut, Zelensky said at a news conference at the close of the meeting with EU leaders. We consider Bakhmut our fortress. Whoa! I thought it didn't have any significant importance. Of course, that's all been a lie. The West is just trying to downplay the situation. And just remember, they're trying to make it seem like, that if Ukraine falls, Putin isn't going to stop. He's going to want to conquer the rest of Europe, which is a bunch of nonsense. Putin literally warned Ukraine that if they tried to join NATO, that would pose a risk to national security, and so Russia could not allow a threat at their border, much like the United States would never allow Mexico or Canada to host Russian missiles, Russian nuclear weapons in their country. Even though they're sovereign, the United States would never respect that sovereignty. And so he actually gave Zelensky and Ukraine a chance not to join NATO, and said that he would not invade if such were the case. But of course, Zelensky is a puppet and a clown, and he went ahead, and now he has blood on his hands. And so, they pretty much, they're pretty much trying to make it seem like if Ukraine loses, Putin is going to conquer the world. But just remember, just like they're downplaying all these victories by the Russians, once the Russians are completely victorious over Ukraine, they're going to backtrack or contradict their initial position, and they're going to try to make it seem like, in reality, this victory isn't that big of a deal for Russia. So just remember that. You'll see their hypocrisy. Like, all things always come to light. While Zelensky and other top officials met with their guests from Brussels, air raid sirens sounded in Kyiv and across the country twice during the day. So while Ursula and all these European leaders were there, sirens were going off because of Russian missiles, signaling a possible Russian missile attack. No major strikes were reported. Yeah, I'm sure that promise of those millions of light bulbs must have been really reassuring, huh? The summit was a gesture of solidarity by the European Union, the first such gathering since Russia's full-scale invasion began nearly a year ago, and a strong signal to Moscow, which has sought to block Ukraine's aspirations to become a Western-style democracy for more than a decade. Western style. Oh yeah, that's got to be the dream of every country, right? It's either that or... Those aspirations, however, remain a long-term dream. A joint statement said membership would only occur upon Ukraine meeting all conditions specified in the Commission and Commission's opinion. So pretty much they're saying, there's still a lot of corruption problems in Ukraine. Of course, we've seen that Zelensky has been sacking a lot of these Ukrainian oligarchs and leadership under the pretext that he's cleaning out the corruption, right? Um, he's just pretty much solidifying his hold on power. Of course, if he really wants to, rid Ukraine of corruption, then he pretty much needs to axe himself, because he is literally the head. He is the most corrupt person in Ukraine. Zelensky, speaking at the closing news conference, said Ukraine had fulfilled many of the requirements under extremely difficult conditions of confronting Russian terror and full-scale invasion. Our goal is absolutely clear: to start negotiations on Ukraine's membership in the European Union, Zelensky said, flanked by European Council Charles Michel, I think that's how you pronounce it, and European Commission President Ursula warmongering von der Leyen. Zelensky added that he thought the EU would be ready to begin such talks this year. In your dreams, buddy. Never joining the EU. Again, by the time by the time they actually get accepted, it'll be under Russian leadership. Von der Leyen, however, said there were no rigid timelines, but rather goals that Ukraine needed to reach first. Michel, or Michael, no, I think it's Michel, for his part, said the EU was with Zelensky and the Ukrainian people today, tomorrow, and for as long as it takes. And of course, those millions of light bulbs will get the job done, right? But it is still far from clear that Ukraine will be able to emerge intact from the continuing Russian onslaught. Again, more foreshadowing there. Although Zelensky in recent days has initiated a sweeping crackdown against corruption, except against himself, Ukraine's immediate future hinges far more directly on the delivery of weapons, not light bulbs, weapons, including tanks, to help defeat against what is expected to be a major new Russian offensive, perhaps starting within weeks. So you can go read the rest of this Washington Post article, guys. But there you have it. Zelensky contradicting all the downplaying that has been taking place in the Western media propaganda machine, pretty much trying to make it seem like Bakhmut really isn't that important. But in fact it is. And once it collapses, it's going to demoralize the Ukrainian troops even more. And it'll be the worst loss for Zelensky and his regime since the beginning of the war, since so many Ukrainian soldiers have died there. And again, this is going to be a rallying point for Russia. It's only going to invigorate more the Russian army. And since we are, we're going to be seeing German tanks now heading into Ukraine, Russia, I'm assuming, is going to launch this major offensive to try to put an end to this war. So we got to keep an eye out on Bakhmut, guys. Again, I'm going to be gone for 3 days, so the Russians could take control literally in the next 3 days. That's how quickly things develop. But once we see the Russians take control of that, guys, big things are going to happen. And again, we are nearing the 1 year anniversary here of this conflict. I believe that's on February 24th. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But big things are going to take place this month. And I think this major offensive, or a major move by Russia, is going to develop here right after the fall of Bakhmut. So just remember, the truth is stranger than fiction. Anyways, leave me your comments down below. Let me know your thoughts and opinions. And again, make sure you give this video a like and make sure you subscribe. Also, if you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Again, by the grace of God, I'll see you guys back on Monday. Thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.